Hi there, it's Jason, aka Jonathan Melky. I thought I'd show you how I bake normal maps using Blender and Xnormal. So you see here I've got my low poly all set up and ready to go for baking, and then I've got my high poly, which is what you bake the normals from. So you gotta have both these two things to start the baking process. Okay, and you notice I've marked sharp edges with mark sharp in Blender, which some of you are saying, you can't have sharp edges when you bake, with cage files and all this other stuff with Blender. Well, yeah, you can if you do sharp edges, and the edges are only on seams. The sharp edges don't have to be on all the seam areas, but you can only put sharp edges where you've split the UVs using seams in Blender. Um, okay, so we've got high poly, low poly. Now we actually need a cage, so we can tell Xnormal how far we want to shoot rays out and what we want to bake on. So I've duplicated the low poly. So, and I'm going to apply the triangulate and mirror modifier, which you need a triangulate modifier on the low poly first, since, well, okay, it's going to already be on there since you duplicated. But the triangulate ensures that the mesh won't change when, say, if you do it export, it might triangulate differently than, say, the mesh might be triangulated automatically in Blender. So the triangulate modifier ensures that it's universal across the whole mesh. It'll stay that way throughout the entire texturing, exporting process overall. So I've got my cage now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it up so it covers all of this. And since we have everything applied, we haven't applied our sharp edges modifier yet, it won't create holes. So all we have to do is say Alt S, which is shrink flatten, and it covers all the red spots, so there's no red spots showing at all. And then, since we've got that, we're going to export all of our files. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go export object, and I'll do low poly, and these are the settings I use. So I can't really export because it generates it makes the corrupt mesh since I'm doing a recording. So just know I did this exactly. This is exactly the same. So I hit export object. Okay, we exported it. Now we do the same with the high poly. We go, Control Z. We go export object, wavepoint object, same settings here. And then we do high poly, export. Now we go with the cage. We do file, export, object. You got to make sure selection only, or else this will be bad. And then you do cage. Okay, export. There. Now, in Xnormal, I'm going to actually remove this so you can actually see me assign everything. Remove. Okay, first let's add the high poly. So we'll go into my bake folder that I had. We'll do high poly, open. I'm going to set the smooth normals to average since that gives a softer look from the high poly. And then we're going to go to the low definition or low poly, and we're going to say add another mesh. So low poly. And then we need to add a cage, so it ensures that that cage that overlays over the high poly, so so it'll bake correctly. So we'll say use cage, and then we'll say this is a right click, and we'll do browse external cage file. We'll say cage open. Okay, and it has to be the exact same thing. It'll always warn you about that. So you say okay, and then you go to baking options, and this is the size of the map. And then you've got 1 times. And since we're doing Blender and we're probably going to bring that normal map back into Blender, we need to do swizzle coordinate. Probably in the default Xnormal will be Y minus, so you want to do Y plus. And then you're pretty much set. Oh, and you want to say where you want to output your export. So you can just put a name and then it'll put the output afterwards. And you can choose the image file. And since I've already got that set up, I'm not going to change that. And then we hit generate, which it just generates it, and it spends a long time doing this depending on your settings. I highly recommend Xnormal because it generates a high quality result every single time, especially when you have cage meshes, and it has no problems with Blender files or anything. So, highly recommend it, and it's free. Go type in Xnormal in Google search, and it will pop up. The only thing is, they did release a 64-bit version, which they made it so it was only 64-bit, I should say. And I was on 32-bit at the time, and I was all whiny. Then my computer crashed, and then I had to switch to a better operating system because the hard drive crashed on the other one, or at least the operating system did. So this is going. So then I had to upgrade to 64-bit. But yeah, you should really be on 64-bit if you're wanting to get into games, anyways. So okay, and I'm going to pause the recording because this could take a while. So okay, and we're back, and it has finished. You can see it's generated a normal map in 136.9292 whatever seconds. So we're going to close this, minimize Xnormal, and we're going to go back to our low poly. We're going to switch Alt. We're going to use Alt Z, and that's going to switch GSL texturing on. Well, you got to make sure you got GSL and shading on. So we're going to go into our material, which is just the gun material. We're going to add a new texture. We'll call it normal map. Doesn't matter what you call it. Just, type in something. Or nothing at all, whatever you prefer. And we're going to go to my Xnormal output folder that I specified where I wanted Xnormal to put its output. I'm going to do normals. We're going to open image. And we're going to change it to normal map. Change it to UV, turn off color, turn on normal. And as you can see, it makes it look much better. It looks very smooth, even though it's a very low poly model. And as you can see, there's like no bleeding or anything. There's hardly any overlapping. There's a little bit here. It's not that great. Probably if you turn the anti-aliasing up in Xnormal, it'll probably take away most of that. But yeah, you can see it adds so much detail. It makes everything look so much smoother. It makes it look it's very high quality bakes it produces. I mean, with Blender you wouldn't be able to do this because of the overlapping geometry. I mean, we've got loose parts everywhere. I mean, it would not be able to handle it. So that's why I've decided that doing Xnormal actually makes it so that that program is dedicated entirely to baking. So it's going to be excellent at that. Blender is an all-around modeling everything platform. It tries to do pretty much everything, and jack of all trades, master of none. And especially in baking, baking is pretty much, in my opinion, it's really non-existent. It really just doesn't work. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was informative enough for you. I mean, the biggest thing I think of my technique that helps is the fact that I don't apply the sharp modifier when I scale up the cage. That method is the best way I've found so far, and I don't think many people know about that. That the fact is you can do the sharp edges and not apply it and scale up the mesh. That's have the triangulating mirror modifier, because if you scale it up that way, it won't work correctly. But yeah, it works really good. Oh, and another thing, if you want to avoid seams, you got to make sure that any of these are not near the edges. Any of your UVs aren't near the edges, which is this really crappy UV unwrap. It was a smart UV project just for this tutorial. But even so, I made it so I packed it so it wasn't close to the edges. If it is, you could get weird seams in your model. And as I said, make sure that your marked sharp edges are only on your seams. They can't be anywhere else. You can only mark sharp edges on UV seams, or else this baking method will not work. So I guess that's all. If you have any questions, please leave comments with this video, and if you think I need to, if you want some further details in baking, please, I'll make one. It's not too much of a problem. I mean, it's something that I've spent the past 2 years actually learning, perfecting myself on the Babylon 5 Founder project. and I'm still even learning. So it's always a learning process. Don't be afraid to experiment and have fun. Signing off, Jonathan JSM Monkey.